But welcome everyone. This is Holacracy and Beyond with Tom and Dennis, a conversation with two pioneers in the field of holacracy, and this is being sponsored by Exploring Forward-Thinking Workplaces. I'll put my screen on max here. But we thought we'll go through some introductions here, get a little more background introduction to Dennis and Tom and myself, and Exploring Forward-Thinking Workplaces and what that's all about. And then Dennis and Tom have a presentation that'll give us an introduction to holacracy and talk about self-organizing beyond the work. And we have some periods set aside for questions and discussion. We got a lot of good questions that were submitted, so we've got those prepared, and we'll go through those, and we can open up the mic for anybody who wants to ask anything else as well, and then a quick wrap up at the end. So this could take 40 to 90 minutes, depending on the questions and how that goes. And I'm Bill Fox. I'm the co-founder of Container 13 and something we call Exploring Forward-Thinking Workplaces. And Exploring Forward-Thinking Workplaces is our connection to Dennis and Tom today. And what this is all about, it's what we call an ongoing global and workplace conversation where we look to discover our shared wisdom. And what we do, we ask 6 questions. And our leading question is, how can we create workplaces where every voice matters, everyone thrives and finds meaning, and innovation and change happen naturally? And we've interviewed 33 people so far, and we're getting some fascinating responses to that. And we interviewed Dennis last year, and it was a really good interview, and we had a lot of feedback on it, a lot of traffic. If you haven't read that, we'll send a link, so you should really try and tune into it. And Tom, I'd like to introduce you, Tom Thomison. He's a co-founder and partner at encode, and also a partner at HolacracyOne. Tom, you want to say hello and maybe give a minute or two on your background?
Yeah, thanks, Bill, for having us here. Looking forward to this conversation, and I really resonate with those questions. How can we get everybody to participate and have a more natural innovation cycle, and everybody being able to contribute? It's kind of been some of the strong themes of my entrepreneurial background. So I've got 30 plus years starting new businesses, bringing new organizations into the world. That seems to be my creative outlet. And before founding encode.org, my current endeavor, I co-launched HolacracyOne with Brian Robertson back in 2007 to usher holacracy into the world, this new practice of self-organization that lots of folks are now talking about. So I've done that for about a decade and found my entrepreneurial itch scratching a little bit and needing to itch it and look at maybe what's beyond organizing around work, holacracy style. What can we do? How can we bring more of those questions to our workplace?
Okay, thank you, Tom. Yeah, I like what encode is doing, the questions you're taking on there. It's kind of a fascinating alignment in some regards to what we're doing as well. And next, let's see here. Dennis. Dennis is a partner at encode, and welcome, Dennis. And would you like to say a minute about your background?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. And yeah, I'm working with Tom and others at encode.org. Before that, I was very active in the integral movement, and my history with holacracy and those questions dates back to, I would say, 2006, where I first met Tom and Brian in the early days of HolacracyOne. They just founded it, and decided, wow, this is something I really resonate with and something I want to help bring into the world. And our paths crossed again last year in July, when we kind of got into the conversation around encode.org, and I was free to join this organization, and I'm very happy to be working in a holacratic environment now, and be pioneering this fascinating work around creating a context for self-organization that really is grounded in solid practices, but also good legal, social agreements that really work with local jurisdictions. Yeah, that's in short
Okay.
background.
Okay, thank you, Dennis. That's very good. Yeah, and thanks for the new perspective you brought to our interview series on some issues. It was really good. Okay, and we're ready to for Dennis and Tom to talk about their presentation. So, Tom, I'll transfer control over to you here.
Great. I'll share my screen once I can do that.
Okay, you should have it now.
All right. Okay, great. You should be seeing the front screen here, the first slide.
Yeah,
Thanks, everybody, for showing up. Again, thanks, Bill, for putting this together. And Dennis, my friend, who I've known for more than 10 years now, had the initial conversation with Bill more about Holacracy and this new forward-thinking workplaces, how that's showing up in the world. So I was honored to be invited to come in and talk about that and continue exploring this broader new world of work space, which I think we're all playing in. It's kind of funny, as I said briefly in my intro, I've had 10 years actually of living in this space of self-organization. It's been pretty interesting, and it's kind of blossomed into a broader genre of this whole new world of work. There's a lot of folks talking about the new world of work. Funny thing is, though, if you've been around long enough, you know that's a truism. It's always true. The future progresses, and it's always a new world of work. But this time around, for me, I've been through a few of those cycles, probably like many of you. This time, for me, it feels fundamentally different. It feels like there's a fundamental shift at play. And I tried to distill down the characteristics this time around for me, what the fundamentals, the characteristics of this new world of work feel like. And I came up with 5 that kind of are marked of this.
Timeout. I don't know if you are we are all seeing the second slide now, which I think you're speaking to, because I just see your kind of PowerPoint layout. I don't know if it's
so it should be
me.
The new world of work slide. Is that true?
Yeah.
Still there?
Bill, what do you see on the screen? Do you see the PowerPoint kind of program?
Yeah, I just see the PowerPoint program. We're not seeing the presentation right now.
Yeah, so
let me take control back and give it to you again, Tom.
Okay.
Sometimes that works out.
Let's try that again. Anyway, as we're doing that, markers. The new world of work is purposeful. This is becoming part of the vernacular. Purpose-driven everything. Purpose drives our work, inspires us. It's the fundamental why we're showing up and lending our time, energy, and talent to the organizations that we work and care about. Holarchic, a new structure in place. Of course, this is squarely in the space that Holacracy plays in, bringing a new organizational structure. One of the big misnomers about Holacracy is that it oftentimes gets thought of as a flat system. That could not be further from the truth. In fact, one of Holacracy's early partners, Alexia Bowers, wrote a very nice piece posted on Medium about some of these fundamental myths that you can go out and find. So the new world of work is structured, deeply structured, but it's a new structure, not a power hierarchy, but a different structure, a holarchy. And it's autonomous. There's a lot of independent action taking. It's the ability to act, not ask for permission, but to have clear authority to act in spirit of the purpose that you care about. It's dynamic. In other words, dropping some of the notions of predicting and controlling, or predicting the future and controlling for outcomes. I think we all have enough experience now of how that doesn't work so well. And the last marker that I've noticed is the new world of work being transparent, high degree of visibility, and transparency across every aspect of the business. Financial aspects, processes, as much transparency as you can stomach, as I sometimes say, are markers of this new world of work. And this has been going on for quite some time. This is not so new. For me, a whole decade of bringing Holacracy into the world. I've had the privilege of leading many of the more well-known deployments of Holacracy and having a front seat of how this is actually landing for organizations. But there have been a lot of earlier pioneers in this space. So I don't know if you're seeing my slide or not.
No.
Wonderful.
Should I try display my screen? Maybe, I don't know, maybe that helps.
Yeah, someone should display.
I have slides here, Tom. I could pull them up on mine, and you could just tell me when to.
Yeah, let's try that.
Okay.
I'll continue to talk. So, yeah, I never got the share screen icon, Bill, so sorry.
Okay, interesting. And what the heck?
Yeah, it worked in the test run.
Yeah.
So a little dynamic steering for those of you that know Holacracy speak. Reality as it dishes itself out.
Am I on the right slide where you want to be, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, so this work builds upon a lot of the early pioneers. Gore, Morningstar has got a lot of press and started to home grow their own new world of work, incorporating self-organizing principles. This is one of the key. Letting organizations be self-organized around a purpose. Let that purpose draw the structure, the organization, and the authority at play. To get rid of the notion of a management hierarchy and predict and control power structures. These were some of the early pioneers. And then, as Dennis and Bill talked about in the last interview, spent a lot of time on Holacracy. And again, my privilege of being with Brian Robertson and the folks at HolacracyOne that distilled down a portable set of rules for self-organization to make this mode of coming together and doing work in the world available and portable for any organization that wanted to try it out. So HolacracyOne's gift to the world really is the Holacracy Constitution, a defined set of rules that can be adopted by anyone that wants to try replacing its management hierarchy for something else, a distributed authority system, a new structure of the work instead of personal power holding. And so Holacracy is about that. It's about distilling down and formalizing these rules to make self-organization possible for many, many organizations all over the world. And then there have been some early pioneers there, many that you probably have read about. The David Allen Company, of course. Zappos has got a lot of interesting press, for sure. ARCA and many, many hundreds of others all over the world. Now thousands and thousands of people working this way, thanks to Holacracy making this rule set available for folks to try out on their own. So next slide, building on pioneers, there are now a lot of folks, oops, one before that, Bill. There are now a lot of folks in this space talking about the new world of work, talking about self-organizing principles. Probably one of the most popular of late is Fred Laloux's great work on reinventing organization, introducing the notion of teal, that organizations have a developmental trajectory, and that teal is a marker for some of these same characteristics that I outlined in that first slide. Organizations that are purposeful, that are transparent, that are dynamic, that follow an evolutionary purpose, that allow everyone to participate. These are some of the markers, again, that are being now vocalized and catalyzed by these larger special interest groups. Conscious capitalism has been around for quite some time. The responsive.org community is doing a lot of work in this space as well. They just held their first conference in San Francisco that was really well attended. For those of you that aren't connected to that, I would encourage you to get connected to that. They are definitely playing in this space and exploring new techniques, new paradigms, new tools to bring this new world of work to bear. And all of this builds on kind of our background and our experience of What drives the new world of work? This next slide, Bill. Purpose. We've changed the fundamental organizing principle from organizing around a power hierarchy where we're dependent on leaders, even charismatic or inspired or enlightened leaders, but we're still dependent on them in some way to encourage, engage, or otherwise motivate others to do work. And so this has carried us a good ways over the last few hundred years, but started to reach some limits about a decade ago. In fact, it was one of the 2 decades ago, some of the early impetus behind those early pioneers to find a better way to structure and run an organization different from a power hierarchy, something to substitute the power hierarchy, to replace the management hierarchy for something else. And so we now have some experience of doing that differently, organizing around purpose as opposed to organizing around personal power holding. And this is kind of, again, the crux of what Holacracy brought to the table. It gave us a legitimate, mature replacement for the management hierarchy. I get asked all the time, what is Holacracy? There are dozens of definitions, some simple, some subtle, some nuanced, but one of them is that it is a complete wholesale replacement for the management hierarchy. And Holacracy is suitable for any organization that wants to replace its management hierarchy with something else. Now, that sounds super simple, and it is, but it has broad implications. And Dennis has spent a lot of time in those broad implications. In fact, was one of the earliest pioneers with us at HolacracyOne, rolling the clock way back to 2006, 2007. We launched HolacracyOne in 2007, March. So it'll actually be 10 years old in a couple months. And Dennis was around at its birth. And Dennis has experienced some of these key shifts. Next slide, Bill. And let Dennis maybe talk about what it feels like to structure and run under Holacracy. What are we building upon?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's been a ride for me. What are we building upon? As you said, everything is anchored around purposeful work. So all the roles, all the circles, all the accountabilities form a hierarchy of purpose. You break down the purpose into circles, and those circles into roles, and those roles have their accountabilities, recurring activities, which can be further broken down into projects and next actions. So you have the whole kind of stack of aligning around a North Star as something that guides you, and that's something that is not kind of centered around people. This is centered around what you want to actually bring into the world, around the purpose of the organization. And the beautiful thing about Holacracy is that it differentiates people space from the organizational space and protects both in a way. So the way it does that is via the constitution and the rules of the game that are being practiced in, especially in meetings. There are certain meeting types. There are tactical meetings where you can do the operational work, the day-to-day operations, and then there are so-called governance meetings, a new breed of meeting that is pretty alien to anything we know in terms of meetings, that actually enables the organization to rewrite its DNA in real time, I would say. So you, based on what all the people in their roles feel and perceive of the organizational environment, this is kind of experienced as that's a technical term for Holacracy, as attention. So-called attention is something, well, a state of so if you kind of want to, if you have a direction and you're not going into that direction, that creates tension. So the purpose is the ultimate direction, and since everything is informed by the purpose, you experience in your work where you are falling short of that, and you you become aware of opportunities to better express that purpose. That creates tension that you as a human perceive. And in Holacracy, you fill roles. You fill a role, empower, energize functions of the organization that are needed to fulfill its purpose. And you channel those tensions into, first of all, actions and projects, but also recurring actions and broader functions of the organization's roles and circles. And those activities, since the environment shifts and changes, there's a lot of things to process. You want to kind of map that into an updated version of the organization's structure. And that's what Holacracy is so great at, and what these governance meetings are so great for, to give you a tool with which you can update your role description and your the description of your work in real time, make it really meaningful, and make it really relevant, unlike standard job descriptions that are pretty much obsolete and the moment they come out of the printer. So this is really a difference of Holacracy, that it is more agile. It enables a distributed processing and a distributed authority, most importantly, which enables you to, once you have collectively in the circle defined the roles and the limits of your authorities and the grants of your authorities, this enables you to work freely, autocratically within the limits of the authority that your role has been granted. So Holacracy is really a way to collectively define autocratic rule in certain aspects of the organization. And all in all, it enables you to distribute decision-making into really onto the shop floor level. So that means there's less of the typical problems of management, bottlenecks and top-down kind of, so the overload on the management side of decisions need to be kind of granted, or information needs to be processed, and then they need to kind of grant you the authority to act. No, instead you have full authority to act. Everything's allowed, which is not kind of prohibited. So it's the other way around. You have full authority to act, except for those areas that have been defined in governance as those areas you cannot go without permission or checking back with other roles and that kind of stuff. So it's a very different way of self-organizing the work. And maybe I stop here for to not make this part too long. Maybe, Tom, you have some additions to what I said, or
yeah, thanks, Dennis. It is a fundamental change from what we're used to, and it allows for some of those aspirational desires that Bill pointed out in those key questions. It allows everyone to participate in the running and structuring of the organization for purpose. So it's a fundamental change of what we're used to. And I've had 30-some years of experience in the business world. Encode.org is my 6th early stage startup company. I've taken a company through a public transaction. Before HolacracyOne, I was kind of at the top of my management consulting game, and have tried all kinds and varieties of techniques and tools to try to make the workplace better. Everything from agile and lean to business process improvement, to teaming systems, to self-directed teams, to all manners of HR kind of programs. And while all of those have kernels of goodness baked into them, for sure, what I found in my own experience was that they would come right back into the same decision-making structure, the same power structure, the same leadership structure, the same top-down predict and control power structure. And all of that goodness baked into all of those cool tools and techniques would begin to atrophy and die away. And so Holacracy was born, as you've heard many of us say, out of a need that there must be a better way for us to come together and structure and organize our work. And this is what Holacracy does. It's a replacement for what came before. As I said earlier, a wholesale replacement. Its focus is on the work for purpose. Nothing more, nothing less. The structure is a natural structure, a holarchy, designed to express the organization's work for purpose. And it invites, it more than invites, it requires, it needs everyone to participate in sensing how to do that. And this is that tension thing that Dennis mentioned. One of the other many definitions of Holacracy is a tension processing system, so that everyone who senses an opportunity to improve things, to change things, to make it different, make it better, stop what's not working, has the opportunity to do so and can be assured that there's no personal power holding that can trump them. This invites everyone to participate and to process a tension into a meaningful outcome for the organization. So these are some of the key fundamental shifts. I was talking with Bill before we started, and I said, you know, in my own journey, 10 years at this, I am still unlearning some old habits and behaviors. The journey into Holacracy is much about unlearning as it is anything else. It's unlearning held expectations, habits of mind and behaviors about what should happen in an organization, and it's dropping those and trying something new.
May I add something?
Yeah, sure.
At this point, it's fundamentally about growing up, taking responsibility, and learning that because it's moving from a parent-child relationship to a mature, grown-up, you know, eye-level kind of co-creative relationship, and it really mirrors back all the ways that we cling to the old kind of mommy, daddy, please help me, or tell me what to do, or the other way around. And I would like to tell you what to do kinds of ways, and ruthlessly crushes them, ideally, if they practice well.
So many things, so much more than we can convey in just these few minutes. But I hope for those of you not exposed to Holacracy, you might get at least curious, if not excited. And HolacracyOne and the licensed providers all over the world have wonderful programs to do a deeper dive into this practice. And HolacracyOne has a multi-day practitioner training that gives you an immersive simulation of being in an organization, actually experiencing these things that Dennis and I are talking about. So there's an ability to get that deep dive, and I know some of you on the call are already practicing, and I think some of you are working for organizations, helping other organizations to practice, which is way cool. So we don't want to spend too much time on Holacracy per se, but it's a necessary prerequisite for what comes next. Because I will claim it's only from living this way, only from unlearning for me over the last 10 years, that I've gained a new perspective of how to deal with some of the things that Holacracy does not address by design, on purpose. Holacracy is, in this slide, a structure, an organizational operating system, if you will, to express the organization's purpose, period. It is silent on people by design. It is silent on the legal structure by design. And yet these recurring tensions come up, and Holacracy teases them apart and says that's not part of how we structure to express the organization's work in pursuit of its purpose. It's not saying that they are not important, it's just saying that is not part of the Holacracy operating system. And it forces us to deal with those tensions elsewhere, which, Bill, the next slide, from my experience of doing this work, for all the transformation that has occurred and all the goodness that has occurred from deploying Holacracy in the world. The next slide.
Hello.
Hello, Bill.
Yeah.
Can you see it?
Hello.
I'm showing lingering tension. go beyond that.
Okay.
This is
Hey,
hello. This is
Can see it, yes.
this is Peter from Vienna. I have one question, intermediate question. Is there any scientific proof of the concept of tension? Because you're building a lot on this tension concept, and I wonder if we shouldn't look more carefully to that everyone can identify the tension means that we can measure it in a way. What do you think about
Yes.
that?
Actually, there is some interesting research. Tension is just a label for something that we humans do really well naturally. And the way Holacracy defines attention is a felt sense, a gap between what is and what could be. And as humans, we bring all of our senses, all of our capacities to that. Cognitive capacities, emotional capacities, many different lines of our own sense and being to that sense of gap of what is and what could be. This is what Holacracy labels as attention. It's an opportunity. It's a gap to do something different, to show up different. And that's what we're talking about when we talk about processing attention, as opposed to what we're not so good about is predicting outcomes that we think might be desirable and then identifying control steps to try to get to that predicted outcome, all while the world is changing around us. And we kind of ignore our tensions that are showing up because, hey, we said we wanted this predicted outcome. And so that's what we're targeting for, and not paying attention to the tensions that are arising on our own journey. So that's just a brief kind of response to tension as Holacracy holds it.
Thanks a lot.
Sure. And for all the goodness and the transformation that Holacracy brings to our organizational space and organizing the work, there's still some of these lingering tensions. And this comes from my direct experience of leading many of the implementations across the world and being involved in my own practice. Holacracy is silent, or doesn't give us a method or a process to easily address some of these lingering tensions. Like, what do we do with equity structures and ownership? So if Holacracy is a complete wholesale replacement for the management hierarchy, cool, we have no bosses. Great. So we've decentralized authority, we've distributed authority, awesome. Who are these owners? And what do they actually own? And how is that distributed authority? It's not. So we've pushed the bounds with Holacracy kind of out to the edges. And we've done a really good job of organizing the work in pursuit of purpose. But at these edges, we're still suffering from old antique structures, like legal structures that encode equity as a privileged class. This is weird. It's weird to me now. The notion of owning a company sounds as off to me in my ear as owning another person, having a slave. It's just in a world, the new world of work, where everything is for purpose and everything is self-organized and we inspire everyone to participate, that sounds off. How do we deal with profits? How do we deal with organization? What's classically known as organizational culture. But again, to my ears, there are no people inside a structure practicing Holacracy. That sounds like a really strange thing to say, and it's a nuanced position to take because, of course, individuals bring energy and talent and passion. But the structure itself is made up of those roles that Dennis was talking about, and he talked a whole lot more about in his prior interview. So the structure is about roles and accountabilities and circles and functional groups and all the things needed to express organizational work. It doesn't deal with people issues, which means it doesn't deal out of the box with cultural issues. So what do we do about that? And the whole notion of leadership. If we don't have people in the organizational structure and we don't have managers anymore, then what's this notion of leadership? What are we actually leading? If we're not leading people, what are we leading? And so these are some of the new tensions that are being introduced from this new world of work, from self-organizing principles. And me kind of being the entrepreneur that I am, sensing in, what are we going to do about this? that led me to scale back from my operational work at HolacracyOne and start looking at maybe there's a need for another organization to address some of these lingering tensions, to upgrade, if you will, two systems that kind of got left behind. So this kind of motivation, this evolutionary tension, if you will, is what drove me to see if others could see this too, like Dennis and a few other folks, see if there's enough energy to bring to bear to start a new organization. Bill, if you could go to the next slide and just kind of pass through. It was these this notion that our work had just begun, actually. You know, even though we're building on decades of the early pioneers, Gore, Morningstar, and others, building on my own decade of experience with self-organizing systems at Holacracy, in many respects, the journey is just beginning. And so that kind of gave me motivation to look at launching another organization, the organization encode.org. Bill, if you can just step through these next two slides. Encode.org's purpose is to go beyond deployment.
I'm stopping and sharing the screen again at the moment because some people are having some trouble. Hopefully that'll fix it.
Okay. Let me know where you are, and I'll pick back up.
Okay. Are you able to see the slides?
Yes, I can see the slides fine. They're showing up on my screen.
Okay, I'll start it.
Yep, so
let me know where to start.
Encode, yep, just right there would be fine.
Okay.
So encode.org was formed last year with a purpose to bring in something new into the world, to upgrade, if you will, these two other systems that Holacracy is, by design, silent on, the legal system and the people system. So Encode's purpose is to go beyond employment and to liberate purposeful work in a cohesive manner across the entire enterprise. So we are working to upgrade the legal structures and the people structures to embed in them the very same principles that we've been talking about. Those markers in the new world of work, we want them to show up in the legal structure and our people structures. The self-organizing principles that are baked into Holacracy, distributed authority, power held by no person, transparent rules, accessible and applicable to all, no power held personally again, we want those to show up in our legal structures and our people structures. And so this is the work of encode.org, is to upgrade our corporate structures across the world in various jurisdictions across the globe, and to re-envision what it is to be a collective of individuals who are coming together for purpose, our people structures. So I'm not going to spend too much time, but just plant some seeds. Next few minutes, just what does this look like? So if we can step through and look at three different spheres. You might say that Holacracy helped to differentiate the work. It took that fusion of what we sometimes thought of a business, an organization, a firm, where we had people smashed with bosses and CEOs and owners and all of this stuff. Holacracy was a differentiation event. It said, let there be a distinction. An organization is not what we thought it was. It is something different. It is a structure into itself for the express purpose of expressing the organization's work. Next slide. So the organization, as we define it, has a focus. The organization is focused on the work. You hear me say that over and over again in my deployments. It's about the work, nothing more, nothing less. And we have a rule set that informs us how to express organizational work. Holacracy has the Holacracy Constitution that's in its fourth iteration, fifth iteration on the horizon. So we have a set of rules that everyone plays by that allows us to organize the work, not the people, have a clear management and control system, and creates kind of an evolutionary process, an evolutionary algorithm, if you will, that lays down structure. So over time, the organization structure ebbs and flows, contracts and expands, depending on what's needed to express the work, meet customer demands, meet new markets, and just respond to whatever's happening in its environment. So this is what Holacracy brings to the table. And so now that we've differentiated, it is time to reintegrate. Next slide, Bill. What we're looking to do with encode is to bring back that which we differentiated from. So we want to reintegrate now from a different perspective, from a different level of understanding, from a different paradigm. We want to bring back the legal structure and the people structure. Next slide. So that our legal structure, the company is the signifier, the label. The company is the legal structure of the organization. And next slide, Bill. Its focus is property. So let's deal head on with assets, profit, equity. So the shares, if you will, of the company. And deal head on with the notions of ownership and governance in the legal bylaws. Now this changes all over the world. This is some interesting work. We've made these changes in the US in a limited liability company structure, and we're making these changes in Europe, in Austria, in Switzerland, in the Netherlands, and in Germany to embed these very same principles into the legal structures so that we can have a self-organizing system that extends out to the legal grounding, the legal anchoring of a company in a specific jurisdiction. And here we allow everyone to participate in various classes of company property. In other words, own an investment stake in the purpose of the company itself. This is huge. It changes from having owners being a privileged class that can trump or outvote to saying, no, we want an equal playing field that everyone gets to participate to the degree they want or care in a long or short-term investment in the company's interests, the company's assets. And we get rid of antique governance. We encode new governance, distributed authority. We get rid of the notion of owners, boards, directors, officers, fiduciaries that constrain and bind the legal company in ways that are unwanted. And we shift even the legal structure to for purpose. This is kind of cool, right? Because now we have legally encoded a for-purpose enterprise. Not a for-profit, by the way, nor a non-profit or a for-benefit. None of those. It's actually for-purpose. And it frees the company to pursue that purpose and use the property, its assets, to express that purpose in the world. So I get pretty excited about that. That's happening across the globe in different legal jurisdictions. And then we're also doing the very same thing with our people structures. So if you can scroll down, Bill. We want to reintegrate the company, which represents the legal structure, and we want to reintegrate people. So interesting, you heard me say before, Holacracy is a complete wholesale replacement for the management hierarchy. Awesome. With no bosses, why do we need employees? What's up with that? That seems like a very old construct as well. And the interesting thing is when we change our legal structure, like I just described, this allows everyone to show up as a legal member, not as an employee, not as an indentured servant, but a legal member of the company and hold different membership interests or investment stakes in the company. And this changes what we can do with the collection of people. So if you scroll to the next, Bill, the association is the next container for the collective of people.
Forward,
So,
not backward, Bill.
I'm sorry?
Forward, skip forward twice. You're going back.
No, I think that we had it right.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Okay. Association, yeah.
Yeah, so the association, next up. Next one, Bill. Unless you're already there. So the association, its focus is about the people. And it too has a clear set of rules. So for the organization, the clear set of rules is the Constitution. Cool. For the company, the clear set of rules, bylaws or operating agreement, the legal structure. For the people, the clear set of rules is an association agreement. An agreement, a conscious choice by the members to come together and be aligned for purpose. This allows us to rethink the collection of humans to actually care about the purpose of the enterprise. And now we can create clear agreements around the social norms that are operating in that association, in that collective. We can re-envision the notion of human resources, that things that typically show up in the field of human resources, like mentorship and development and progression. We can create a much more natural hierarchy of the people, and we can deal with tension in a new way, in a way that is appropriate to interpersonal tension between individuals. There's a rich field of study, decades old, of how to come to better understand self and other and integrate perspectives amongst and between individuals. And we bring that into the association space to create a natural hierarchy of the people who are coming together for the purpose. So next slide, Bill, and this will sum up. So encode is about continuing the journey. So my 10-year journey with Holacracy, just the beginning, and it was building on decades of early pioneers. So this thing of self-organization is sweeping the planet. This reinventing organization a la Fred Lelou and Thiel is sweeping the planet. And what encode is doing is pushing the boundaries even further, saying organizing the work, awesome. Self-organizing the work via Holacracy, transformative. Let's push the boundaries even further and take those principles and bake them into the legal company structure and bake them into the people collective structure so we can have a cohesive enterprise end-to-end that's for purpose. And what you can't see highlighted there, but if you would draw your attention to the focus, the overlap of that Venn diagram, there sits a space where you, the individual, now can show up on purpose as an agent of purpose, if you will, and choose as an adult, like Dennis said, consciously, how you want to spend your time, energy, and talent and contribute that to a purpose you care about. So it frees or liberates you from being an employee to be an independent actor, an agent of purpose, to make choices about how you want to work and earn and live in your professional environment. So this is what encode is working on. Lots of resources that you can go tap to learn more. The last slide, Bill. We have lots of places that you can reach out to, both with Holacracy and HolacracyOne. So as I said, you can learn a whole lot more. There's a decade of research and writings and white papers and classes and providers all over the world that you can touch to learn more about Holacracy. And I would strongly encourage you to do that. And then at encode, we are a one-year-old company, so we don't have that 10 years behind us. But we do have workshops that we're putting on in Europe, in the States, and we're working with early clients right now. We're working with attorneys all over the world to change these legal structures. And you can reach out to learn more about us through signing up on our website for a newsletter, or sign up for a workshop if you find us in your area. So that's a little bit about my own journey with Holacracy and encode and the space of self-organization and what I see as next. So kind of a whirlwind tour for sure, but hopefully to plant some ideas, some seeds, and maybe now some questions.
Thank you, Dennis and Tom. That's a very good presentation, very enlightening. Does anyone have any question they'd like to ask? You can unmute your microphone.
Hello.
Speak up there. Hello,
Yeah.
Peter.
Hello, this is Peter from Vienna again. I have another question concerning the role concept, because the role concept seems pretty complex, and the companies in Vienna I know working with Holacracy they struggle enormously with living for these different, very varying roles. So that seems to be that all the energy of the companies is falling into the company instead of freeing energy to work with clients, to do work outside of the company. So is there a thought of you to develop the role concept in a way which is less complex?
Yeah, sure. Dennis, do you want to tackle that, or I'm happy to jump in too?
My sense is, I think I wonder if this is a matter of kind of experience with Holacracy practice and how to use the tools of Holacracy in a way that are conducive to business. So, as Tom always says, nothing should get in the way of work, and if Holacracy gets in the way of work, then that's not a good thing. So the role concept. So if there's role creep or people divide their the accountabilities or the work up into too many roles, maybe, or they make up things from their mind, kind of, and those past governance. This can be a problem. So kind of too much design instead of just processing real tensions. So that could be a reason for the problems. Just from the top of my head, I don't know, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, this is a natural that comes up. I don't know at what stage the organization you're talking about is in terms of their practice, but in early stage, there's the classic slow down to speed up. You're learning something new, so you'll see a dip. And then it gets back to the unlearning. We're bringing old habits, actually old habits that are no longer serving, that are getting in the way of getting the work done, and we're making it overly complex. Holacracy's principle is now, next, minimally sufficient, no more, no less. So don't over-design. All you want to do is capture the current work, nothing more, nothing less. And until there's a tension about that current work, no need to change. This is new. We're unaccustomed to. So over time, we should find that the system of roles, by the way, systems of roles have been around for decades too. This is not new. But to structure the work in a collection of roles is a much more efficient and real way of honoring what work is needed. So you should see the complexity actually drop out as opposed to increase over time. But as Dennis said, this comes with practice and with some unlearning too.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dennis and Tom, we have another question here that was submitted by Tom Cox, and his question was, what are some of the examples of these new agreements? He's saying it's kind of hard to visualize from the high-level descriptions.
Yes, so there are some basic foundational agreements. And I can't put them on the screen, but so we need to rethink and refactor the basic shareholder agreement or operating agreement. So in the States, that takes the form of an LLC document. In Austria and Germany, the GmbH. And in Switzerland and Netherlands, different. So the form is different in each legal jurisdiction. But the principles that we bake in are the same. So we change the legal language such that we upgrade it and we use governance, distributed governance, as the management control system. We shift the fiduciary. We specify these classes of investment interests that people can own. We do about a couple dozen things. We change the legal structure of the company that is valid in whatever legal jurisdiction we pick. So it needs to be valid and honored in the States, in the Netherlands, in Austria, and so on. And then we create a kind of a new meta layer of agreements in the legal structure. Then we have a membership grant agreement, an IP and confidentiality agreement, an association agreement, and each of these are designed to capture clear agreements for each of those spaces and tie it together. So that's the best I can do in language and words without actually showing you those agreements. If you have an idea, if you're an experienced business guy or gal, you've probably been exposed to operating agreements or shareholder agreements or bylaws. We're talking about those agreements and changing them to bake in the very same principles that are showing up in these self-organizing practices.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Does anyone else have a question? Go ahead.
Just wanted to add, we just work with what we find in terms of legal and local jurisdictions. So we tie it into existing national law, existing law. I mean, the other way would be to say we actually, dear legislator, we need a new kind of legal container for this kind of enterprise, that we need a for-purpose enterprise construction that is kind of, that we can just kind of use. And that's maybe a long-term project. What do you think, Tom? Doing some lobby work. But until then, I think the easiest way is to actually tie it into what exists, and that's what we're that's the kind of the juicy work of figuring that out on the granular level that we're working with different lawyers in different countries with. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dennis and Tom. If anyone else has anything to ask, please unmute and ask. Otherwise, we'll go on to some of the questions that were submitted here to us. Okay, here's another question that came in. Why is Holacracy and beyond a better place, and what would make a journey to there a successful one?
Yeah, so hopefully all of you listening and participating might have a better sense of how to answer that question. It gets at some of those principles that Bill was pointing to right at the very start. We want everybody to be motivated by purpose. We want everyone to be able to participate in pursuing that purpose. We want innovation and creativity to arise unencumbered. This is what Holacracy and self-organization brings to the table. It liberates. It allows everyone to play by the same set of rules with no privileged classes. It replaces that conventional management hierarchy to replace even the most enlightened managers with a process that everyone participates in. So it achieves what lots of folks are seeking, engagement, and it allows purpose to pull. And it removes bottlenecks and constraints that have been around for years and years, especially as things become more and more complex. No one person, no one brilliant leader can hold it all in her or his head. And so this distributes participation to everyone and allows the organization to be much more responsive, reactive, to have a diversity of perspectives at play to pursue its purpose. So it's a much more stable, resilient, anti-fragile, if you will, structure that benefits from the sense of everyone participating. That's why you would want to work in a place like this. It frees you to bring all of yourself unencumbered to participate in a purpose you care about. And the journey getting there, this is a lot of unlearning. So you need a good coach, and you need to be patient with yourself and develop a capacity to kind of sense the shifts at play. This is hard on us individuals because we've been socialized in a particular manner, in a particular way, accustomed to our thoughts about what business is and showing up for work is. So making the journey there successful is getting some good coaching, getting some good advice to help you through some of the major milestones or markers on that journey. And luckily, there are a lot of great sources now in the world, back to those early pioneers, that can help others to follow and make their journey successful.
Yeah, I might add, you may want to try one of the workshops I'm offering. So this is a starting point. Anyway, and I can second that. A good coach, I think, is key to get you there. So you can try to teach yourself guitar without a teacher, but certainly any practice, and Holacracy is such a practice, you can benefit from somebody who has tons of experience in that practice. They can speed up your learning like dramatically. And I wouldn't even want to convince people that Holacracy is a better thing. If the thing they're doing is working for them, great, no need to change. But if you feel a tension, if you feel like your potential is not used fully, or you are in a kind of relationship to your boss or somebody that kind of that feels disempowering for you, or where you do not can unfold your full potential, then maybe you are feeling that pull that we felt certainly, and yeah, the path of Holacracy, self-organization, and what encode is doing is certainly a very good answer to some of these tensions.
Okay, thank you, Dennis and Tom. I'll go to the next question here. I think we already addressed this one on the role concept.
Yep.
And next one was, are servant, new work, authentic, modest leaders less successful in purely economic terms?
Yeah, I don't know if the person with the question is online. I'd like to ask a clarifying question to make sure I understand what they're pointing to. If not, I can take a stab at it.
Hi, Tom. This is Joe. This is my question. Hi.
Awesome.
Hey, another encoder partner
Yeah,
right in the
that's a
line.
question that really interests me for a long time. So what's your clarifying question?
Successful. By what measure?
By the measure in purely number crunching.
Money, money, money.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So like profit, turnover, profit per shareholder, like the typical conventional work key numbers.
Yes. So it depends on which system. So if you look at Holacracy and the organizational system, one of the principles is transparency and visibility around as much as you can stomach, including the financial details. Compensation, salaries, profitability or lack of profitability, open systems, open bookkeeping, open accounting principles apply here. So that's one step, is just to be real, face reality about the economic condition of the organization, and then make decisions about how that wealth or those assets are distributed. So Holacracy brings a lot to that. It doesn't guarantee everyone is going to be equal, but it does bring visibility and transparency to how those profits and proceeds are being distributed. And then that could cause a tension in the system to affect some change, to change how an individual is benefiting economically from participating in that system. So if that is connected in a broader system that is still grounded in our conventional legal structure, then we have a problem where owners and board members and officers can privilege towards profit. And so it can skew things. And this is what encode is wanting to address. So it's not saying that the answer to the question is quite neutral. It's what should be the appropriate distribution of proceeds, the appropriate distribution of profits for the individuals that are participating in expressing the organization's work. So it doesn't say less or more. It says make conscious choices about how you grow and run the organization financially. Should you retain profits for growth, or should you distribute profits to those that are helping to do the work of the organization? What this does is it shifts how those decisions are made and the visibility and transparency around the data to make those decisions. It doesn't say leaders should be any more or less successful. Does that make sense?
A half.
A half? What's the other half missing?
No, let's discuss this in another forum, Tom. But thanks very much. It makes sense for Holacracy, and it's not the answer for organizations not practicing self-organization or Holacracy yet.
No, so my answer does not address other systems.
Yeah, exactly. But thanks anyway.
Okay, another question we have here is, how do we support people to make this kind of change? You probably addressed that in some manners away, but maybe there are other things to say.
We have a little bit. I go back to that one slide. There are a lot of catalyzing organizations to support people to make this kind of change. So the whole conscious capitalism movement, the whole teal movement, a la reinventing organization, the whole responsive.org movement is exposing individuals who care about these things or are feeling tensions about their own work and work environments to want to learn more and learn how to affect the change. So that how do we support? It's a broad spectrum. There are a lot of folks, both old and new, that are in this space helping others to become aware of what's possible. So on that one slide, responsive, conscious capitalism, Vistage, purpose-driven networks, teal, Holacracy as a whole ecosystem is a great place to go learn more and get support for the kind of change that you seek.
Okay, very good. We got a couple more questions here. Next one was, how do we make teal the new normal?
Dennis?
Try really hard. No. Let's see. So I guess we just have to model it and make it and be good at it and make it attractive. And so I think it's really about walking up our talk and not just be aspirational, but really doing the work and practice those new practices and really be thorough and skillful and in that. And that should, if it's all, if you practice well, should make your organization responsive, agile, and also be more aligned with, I think, what are the emerging new conditions in this world, which is we need to react much more quickly, and we need to be much more distributed, and we need to make use much more of the collective intelligence of the people working in a company. And if your practical kind of practices enable that, I think you have a competitive disadvantage in this world, and it should show that this is a more successful way of doing business. And if that is so, and the numbers are right, and your business is growing, then I think people will, become attentive to, hi, they're doing things differently, and they seem to be successful, and they seem to be happier, and it's kind of, you don't need to sell it to anybody if you're doing the work, and of course that should not prevent you from telling your friends about it, but I think there's no use for evangelizing, going out in that sense, and trying to convince people with words, convince them with your deeds. I think that's what I would answer to that.
Okay, good. Thank you, Dennis. Yeah, we have a couple related questions here. How can I find and join one of these organizations? And is there a comprehensive list of people practicing or organizations practicing Holacracy?
Yes to the second for sure, and we pointed to a lot of resources on the first question. How do you find and join, get connected to these catalyzing groups that are exploring these spaces, and start a dialogue, or reach out and connect to the responsive movement, to the teal movement, to the conscious capitalism movement. And there are a couple definitive sources. HolacracyOne maintains a list, and there's a wiki link too for organizations practicing Holacracy. So you can Google around and find a list of organizations that are practicing.
Or create one of these.
Yeah.
Become proactive. Just be the change you want to see in the world.
Perfect. Okay, does anyone in attendance want to ask a question? We don't have any more questions that were sent in to us. We've gone through that list. So open it up to see if anyone else has another question. Okay, good. I think we've covered a lot of things here. Tom or Dennis, do you have any final closing comments? I think we've probably reached the end here.
Yeah, well, thank you, Bill, for holding the space, making this available, and inviting us to show up and share a little bit of our story and what inspires us and the type of work that we think is ahead of us to bring in these new self-organizing principles, this new world of work. And thank you for your own participation in that. And it was a pleasure being here.
Thank you, Tom.
Yeah, from my end, also thank you for doing the kind of work you're doing with Container 13. I think it's important. It's helping catalyze, asking the right questions or asking important questions to thinking about what to change and how to change the world of work. So that's, I just want to applaud you for that. And yeah, I think it's important to create spaces where we can have these conversations, where we can inspire each other, where we can ask the difficult questions and explore them together, and pioneer the practices that help create forward-thinking workplaces. And yeah, just let me close with a little block of advertisement for our, because I'm also filling the role of workshop realizer at encode.org. We have a couple of workshops upcoming in Europe, but also in the US. We have one in Budapest in February, and in March we come to Berlin and also Zurich. And all these events also have free, are accompanied by free meetups. So you can join either for the workshop or just join a free meetup and just bounce around some ideas with us around the new world of work. And we're also planning a workshop in the US in April in Boulder. And we're also looking at doing something in May in Seattle. And possibly San Francisco. But you can find out more about this on our website, encode.org. Yeah, and we'd love to see you sign up on a newsletter and maybe stay in touch. That would be awesome. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dennis and Tom. We really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today and answer these questions and tell us a lot more about Holacracy and what's going on behind it and what encode is doing. And we'll be sending out an email. We'll make access available to the recording and contact information for everybody. And if you want more information on exploring forward-thinking workplaces, you can go to forwardthinkingworkplaces.com, and we have a mailing list you can get on. And we continue to do these interviews. We've done 33 so far in the past year. I imagine we'll do at least that amount this year, but we're always looking for new people to talk to expand this conversation. So thank you all for being here. We really appreciate it.
Thanks again, everyone.
Thanks.
Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you. We're all still here.
I'll shut it down here shortly.